Hello, welcome back to Search Sean. This is another Chat with Sean episode, and yeah, it's going to be an awesome one. Quick caveat: this is part one of two parts, hopefully. So, yeah, look, so we'll have a second part to this, but yeah, we're going to cover some great topics today, and as usual, do a quick intro, then we get into them. My guest today probably needs no introduction, but we'll do it anyway because it is tradition. But you probably know it's Eli Schwartz, and Eli is a growth advisor and SEO strategic consultant, and of course, author of the book Product Led SEO. And yeah, so great to have you on the show, Eli. Big fan of yourself. So yeah, awesome.
Honored to be here. I saw a bunch of those guests you had on YouTube and in the intro video. So honored to be here too.
Yeah, nice, really good. And I guess we're getting to it as part one, as we say. It'd be stupid not to cover kind of what's going to happen next year. Crystal ball or whatever. I'm going to compile, for those watching, I'm compiling a group of sources and putting that into a prediction video as well. So that's for down the line. But generally, what are your main predictions for how search will evolve in 2026?
So I'm actually working on this right now for my newsletter. So everyone should subscribe, productledseo.com. My big one is I really think that we're going to settle into a new normal around AI. So it's just going to be a tool instead of like, did you hear there's this thing called AI? Or you've got to do AEO, or you got to do AIO or GEO. I think we'll settle into like a new normal where people just use it. It's a tool and search just happens with it. And which means that SEO sort of stays the way it is. And there's not this like looking around the corner for the next shoe to drop. I mean, like now it's really dead. Now everything's going to disappear. We're going to have like this new normal where a certain amount of search is gone. And I think it's good that it's gone. I think the top of funnel search was not really beneficial for users and was this game of, can I outrank someone else who says the exact same thing? And I think it's sort of good, in my opinion, that LLMs, whatever LLM of choice you have, takes that away. And I think the new search is really going to be around the mid-funnel, which can't be taken by LLMs. And I think that's where we settle in. And that's where companies start focusing on this mid-funnel, which is how do I help someone get to where I am? And to dive into what a mid-funnel is, top of funnel is best vacation spots in Southeast Asia. That's a blog post, right? That's what used to be a blog post. And now you just go to AI, or whether it's Gemini or whether you're just doing a Google search and you get the results. It'll tell you about the best vacation spots. And by the way, there is another apocalypse coming, which Google predicted and said they were going to launch, but didn't come out yet, which is personalized search. So right now you do a search for what's the best vacation spot in Southeast Asia. Most people are going to get the exact same results. But there will be a time, whether it's ChatGPT or whether it's Google, where you will get some sort of personalized response. And that, again, is another apocalypse, which is fine, right? Like if we're moving away from that sort of top of funnel. But mid funnel in that scenario is what's the best vacation spot in Southeast Asia? Top of funnel. Mid funnel now becomes where should someone, again, longer tail, like me, stay in Bangkok, and you're putting some of those things in. That's still Google. That's still, I need to look at websites. That's still, you're navigating searches. There are some people who will say, well, I just use AI for everything. We don't care about them. That's not how we're doing SEO for. We're doing SEO for the 80% of people who still want to click on websites. So I think that's the big thing for 2026 is companies focus in on that mid funnel. That's the reality. That's the search. That's what stays.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And that was kind of following on was going to be the next question about ultimately, is AI actually good for search or not? And I think, at the beginning, I was a bit skeptical because of some of the, results that have been thrown up with the AI overviews and so on. It was very, not the best. I think they probably put it out a bit too early, in my opinion. But generally, the concept of it, as you were saying, makes a lot of sense. Why would you need to go on a blog to go and find that from just one source where you can have this compiled results, and actually have it as quick as you want it? And we know people want information quicker than they've ever wanted it before. So I just feel like AI is just advancing what humans actually want. And these companies like Google have been able to do that quicker than they've been able to before. So I think it's like just how things are evolving anyway. It's just being moved along quicker.
It's good It's good for users. I mean, again, I think this is a problem most marketers have is they forget that most of the time in their lives, they are users and do things that are good for users. I mean, I think about all the scenarios where now I'm like relying on AI, and I think about all the scenarios where I'm not relying on AI, and to force any either side of that to say, well, this is all AI. I'm like, well, if I were a user, it's not what I would do. Would have forced the other way and say, well, this is how search is going to work, and if I was going to use AI, that's not how it's going to work either. So be that user and think about like this is good for users, and like we want to do good marketing for users because ultimately we are all users of something.
Yeah. And that's what ultimately Google is saying, is that the users first, and they want to create the best environment for people to find the information they want. So it doesn't matter in what form it comes, as long as it is the right form for them, and obviously personalization is going to be extremely interesting. I'm sure we're going to either on this part or our next part, how we track that. So generally you think it's a positive move for search to integrate this sort of AI elements into it?
Yeah, I mean, again, think about it from a user standpoint. So, like, I'll give an example: a top of funnel, mid funnel search I've been working on just this week, which is I need to switch my business insurance because I moved, and in the U.S., insurance is always based on state. Doesn't like it becomes like this microcosm of a state licensed insurance. Your insurance certificates issued by the state commissioner. So because I moved, I need new insurance. So I went and did an AI search on that. What is the best business insurance? And then I started loading it up with some parameters of like, I'm a consultant and I offer digital marketing and I work the kinds of companies I work with. Now, two things again for this example. One is it gave me back company names. And what I did with those company names is then I Googled those companies. Now we're talking about mid funnel. That's not bottom of funnel yet because I'm not like doing any sort of thing that I'm going to convert. I'm just doing research. But I am going to those websites and I'm going to review websites about those companies. Now, the second thing is that I wanted to dig in on this is from a personalized search standpoint, I shouldn't have had to do any of that. Now, Google, I did this all on Google and I did it in Gemini. So I've had a Gmail account, I don't know, since Gmail came out. So Google knows who I've paid for insurance companies, and they also know how much I've paid, and they also probably know all the information that the insurance companies sent back in my Gmail, and they've read it all. They also know the websites I've visited for the last 20 plus years on Chrome. They also know all the videos I've watched on YouTube. They even know if I've been cookied by anybody from Google Analytics. I have an Android. I've got all sorts of home devices. They're listening. Now, I shouldn't have had to do any of that. And there is going to be a time where you're not going to have to do any of that. Probably in Europe, it will always be illegal. So Europeans, you're safe. But in America, they're going to use all those things and they're going to pull it in. And I'm going to do a search about give me insurance. And Google's going to be like, well, we know you've been thinking about business insurance and we know everything about you. We've also seen your tax returns. So we know exactly how much money you make. We know everything. So just do that search and we got you covered. And here you go. Right. So like there is going to be a time. Again, I don't think it's very, very near in the future, but we're not talking about sci-fi, dystopian worlds anymore. Google can and will do this.
Yeah. Actually, like you say, I actually think that's for me personally, I know some people don't like the thought of them having all that knowledge and insights into them, but I don't mind. Like, if I think it's like you say, if they know I've got 2 kids and they live here and I've got this sort of budget, without me having to type it all in, obviously that's going to be a better experience. Another thing, obviously I was scraping through your LinkedIn as I do and whatnot. What do you think about EAT today? Because you have some good thoughts on there. And what do you think is like, you believe it's misunderstood or overused perhaps?
I think it's a great example of where a lot of SEO metrics are misunderstood. So a lot of SEO metrics are considered to be quantifiable metrics and people try to optimize towards the math of them. And I think that every single metric in 2025 and going into 2026 is significantly more dynamic than that. And EEAT is one of those that's a perfect example of that. So I remember years ago when Google started talking about EAT without the extra E, and a client of mine was talking about like, well, we're making these new bio pages and we're going to put all of our writers, there's the medical site, they're going to be wearing lab coats. And I'm like, are they doctors or are they not doctors? It's really binary. Are they trustworthy? Are they not trustworthy? You can't fake this out. Like maybe I can fake out people, but if we're trying to fake out algorithms, they're not going to look at the image on the page and say, well, they appear to be wearing lab coats. We're just going to fall for this. Like, it's much richer. And I think now if we move to an AI age, it's incorporating so much more into that score, which you can't really measure, which as an example, and this, I don't think Google does this yet, but again, it's not dystopian and we can imagine a world where they do this. So let's say you have writers that are writing content for your site. Now, Google can match the name of that writer to their LinkedIn profile. So you don't need to put the name of the writer and then put that they have a PhD in whatever they have on the page and you're making this bio page, because that can be faked. What's much harder to fake is to build a fake LinkedIn profile. You can, of course, but could Google do these kinds of things where they're cross-matching and saying this writer writes here also, and this is their level of skill? So now you can fake you can fake the name. You can say, this is this famous doctor, and I'm just putting this famous doctor's name on the piece of content I put on my website. Google can now, again, LLMs can do all of this. They can say, well, we see this level of authority in this other place this doctor writes, and over here it looks like it was written by ChatGPT, not the same person, not the same authority. So we're in a world where it's much, much harder to fake. Now, I would take this even further, which is what LLMs and what Google's trying to do. It's AI, which is artificial intelligence. So it's imitating the way a human would actually approach this. So there are subconscious things that we do when we're evaluating EEAT in real life. You meet a person and this person tells you, you go to a doctor and the doctor tells you that you need to do something for your health. Immediately you evaluate, is this person trustworthy? How did you get to this doctor? And now you take it one step further. The doctor could say, and I've had this experience, and I'm sure everyone has had this experience, where the doctor is giving you this entire list of things and you're like, well, it sounds really good. You want it, yes, I should be taking these vitamins. Yes, I should be doing this. Well, you really have me figured out. And then they're like, when we walk out, please go to my nurse and this is where you buy the pills. And you're like, now I can't trust you anymore. You were selling me the whole time, right? So like no one articulates it. That's the subconscious thing. So we want AI, artificial intelligence, to go through those same steps of like, is this real? What's the outcome? Oh, this is a website that's very authoritative on cannabis, but they sell cannabis. That actually takes down their authority a little bit because they have a financial incentive. This is a website that gives advice. They don't sell anything. They're a nonprofit, and we see they're nonprofit based on against all the other things you're looking at, give it more authority. So I think that's what we want AI to do, to think the same way humans think.
Yeah, that's a good example there, because I've done that before. When you go to a doctor, obviously you think, obviously very creditable, and, and then when you're saying, he goes, what's wrong with you? And then you list out some things that you've just Googled or put into AI, and then they, oh yeah, and they just go along with it. And you're like, okay, well, I'm not the expert. I was hoping that you would give me that information. So yeah, I get that point of view. I think that's a good thing about this introduction of AI. I think some brands, especially larger ones, but definitely any of them really, like when they've had their own reviews on their site or trying to mask who they really are or doing some shady things, perhaps that's not going to be as easy to get away with these days, going forward, which is good for everyone. It's not going to be good for those businesses, but do we really want those sort of businesses thriving on search, and we shouldn't want them. So.
Right. Again, when we think about ourselves from a user standpoint, and the example I've given a number of founders is there was a world where you could be the best at something without being the best at whatever that is before. So let's say you sold the best t-shirt. Let's say you created a brand new t-shirt company and your t-shirts were not that good. You could rank on Google for best t-shirts because you would do good SEO. Now you would have churn and people would have refunds and they would be annoyed at you, but you could sell t-shirts as the best t-shirts. But now we live in an age where you actually have to have multiple signals. You can't just be best. And that's the way it works in the offline world. There's all sorts of subconscious things that we judge. When someone says this is the best t-shirt, you're like, says who? You like look at the label. Oh, look, I feel it. All those things. That's what we want AI to do for us. And I think we're getting to that point where you could do the best SEO ever, but if you're not the best, you won't be declared to be the best by any sort of LLM. And I think we're in a world right now where, like, again, there are metrics and you could fake it and you could get a bunch of citations on Reddit and you can show up on a list of best. But I think the direction that the LLMs are going, the directions we want them to go, is that you can't game it unless you deserve it.
Yeah, 100%. It reminds you of, obviously, Elf has been on recently on the TV and the film. And when he goes into, like, he thinks, because it says the world's best coffee, he takes it quite literally. He thinks they sell the world's best coffee. And it's obviously everyone says that on their shop and stuff. It's a similar thing. We'll go on to the next topic, I guess, in terms of what signals or factors are you seeing becoming the most important for AI visibility? As we talk about metrics, but obviously there's loads of new tools and stuff thrown around, different sort of things we should be measuring and things about AI visibility. Be interested to hear your thoughts on that.
The metrics are actually going to be real metrics. So that makes it much harder. So if you're not deserving and you're not real, then it'll be much, much harder to be visible in search. So a real metric is reviews. A real metric is real social media engagement. A real metric is real customers. As something interesting, I went to the search event in Zurich a couple of weeks ago, and I was having a conversation with John Mueller about the kinds of things that Google could pull in, right? Like we talked earlier about how they could pull in your Chrome history. And John mentioned that Google uses Street View. So they use the Street View data. I don't know whether it's in Google's regular algorithms or whether they use it in the Places algorithm. So the way Street View could work, again, there's a lot there. And I don't know how much in Europe you have this, but in the US, they've got everything, like how busy it is based on how many people with Android or Google Maps devices are in the store. Where, like, what the neighbors look like, are you a barber shop next to an abandoned warehouse? Maybe that's not really a good barber shop. Or are you an ice cream shop that there's always kind of lines to, or are you you want a street, because again, they look at the streets, the cars drive down the street. So there's a lot of data sets they're looking at. So from a metric standpoint, you want to be real. You want to have real customers. You want to have sort of real engagement. There's a lot that can be faked. So for advice for anyone that wants to know how to fake any of this, fake being real. So one thing you can do on the Google Places algorithm, there are agencies that what they do is they gamify Google Places they pay people to go on journeys. So what I want you to do is go look for a lawyer on Google Maps and then drive to the office of the lawyer, and then you pick up this coin, and that's your journey, and now you earn something, right? They've now faked that whole thing. Everyone looks for lawyer and they choose number 3 and they drive to it. It does pop you up higher in the algorithm because that's faking what actual people would do. So if you'd like to force yourself into the things that they're looking at, fake it, right? Get a bunch of incentivize a bunch of people to come in, stay in your store and buy stuff and give a review. I don't know if Google uses Google Pay data, but incentivize a bunch of people to specifically pay with Google Pay. And, that's more signals. So that's what you need to do. Fake being real, but the best thing is be real. Be a good product, great experiences. And, I know it sounds like stupid advice for SEO, but that's Google's cutting out a lot of the things they used to be able to fake. Could you buy links does buying links still work? Yeah, but it doesn't work the same. So I'd rather, spend a bunch of money and buy PR. It's the same concept.
Yeah, I agree. And that was really interesting. I saw your picture with John. That was really cool. But yeah, really fascinating that they look at that sort of stuff. It makes sense, I guess. And yeah, that's the thing. I think now, SEOs, but the whole digital marketing team have to be much better if they weren't doing it before, especially more focus on what people are saying about you, about your service, about your products, and actually trying to, if you haven't, like I say, you should have done it before, but try and fix those problems. That's where you're going to get the real wins and offer the best possible service and product you can. And like I say, all that stuff will follow. Obviously, you can do some active digital PR, but you will get good PR if you do the right things, as you always have done. So, I guess that, I see search teams, we're very good at, collecting data, analyzing data, put it into something that's quite easy to digest. So if we can do that for other teams, I think that's one of our roles for sure.
Yeah, it's one of the things, like I've worked with like big brands, like I worked with LinkedIn and I worked with Tinder and I worked with Coinbase. Like they had been, and one of my favorite things about working with any company, big or small, is that I get to see all their past SEO proposals. Like I get added to a team, I get an email address, and first thing I do is like, okay, let's see what else you had in the past, what audits you've had, what sort of proposals have you gotten. Like it's always in the SEO proposal folder. And there are a lot of agencies that went to big brands that said, now I'm not gonna name names, but like, hey, brand number X, you need, like, we're gonna sell you for $50,000. You need to go and buy links. I'm like, well, a brand that gets a mention every 3 seconds does not need to buy links. What the brand that gets mentioned every 3 seconds needs to do is get the mentions about the thing they do in the media, not like not earning a backlink that is manufactured. But if they have they're launching a new product, they're launching a new experience, make sure the PR team, or make sure that someone's aware that it's being launched. So when they create those conversations that are already being created, it's inserted into the conversation. So it's not about, like, it's about streamlining rather than manufacturing. And the same applies to any small business. Like if you are a small business and all you're doing is focusing in on SEO and you're not worrying about the business, you're probably not going to be that successful, because the business is how you make money. So if you are a restaurant, if you are a legal office, if whatever it is that you're doing, you want people to talk about you, not the fake people talking about you. It doesn't really help if you go and get a bunch of reviews. If you have a restaurant in London and you get a bunch of reviews in the Philippines, that doesn't help you at all. But if you're like, well, I'm a restaurant and I make really good food, so let me make an event where I get people to try my food and talk about my food. I don't know whether it has good SEO value or not, but that's the thing I do as a business. It probably ends up having SEO values. That's the way I would think about it.
Yeah, that's a great example as well. I know we're coming towards the end of the time, so I wanted to definitely get this one in because I enjoyed reading about it. But can you explain your kind of pizza shop example and how that translates into the real world SEO strategy?
So this is something I just had with a client, or a potential client, where they were telling me about all the ways that they're writing content. They're making the same mistake that I see many companies do. So they do good business. Many companies have great businesses. They've been around for a long time. Let's go with the pizza shop example. Specifically, a pizza shop, they make really good pizza, and that's what they do. So then they think about SEO and it becomes like, well, let me go to SEMrush, let me go to Ahrefs, and I'm going to Google restaurant because pizza is too narrow. And then they start writing content about something else. So the example I gave to them, and this was a company in the finance space, which is, you do a really good job and have done a really good job in this one thing. Well, continue to do your SEO about that one thing that you do really well. Don't write this generic content about like, well, we're in the finance space and we also happen to offer money transfers. I'm like, oh, you're really good at credit cards, focus in on credit cards. And they weren't getting that. So the example I gave to them, which is their ICP comes for the credit cards because they do a really good job with credit cards. The same applies, again, bring this over to pizza and diners. If you're looking for really good pizza, you go to a pizza shop. You don't go to a diner. Yes, they make pizza at diners. Yes, they make salads at diners. Yes, they have burgers at diners. But if you're hungry and you go to a diner because that everyone in your party is going to find something that is going to make them not hungry anymore. That's the goal. But if you are looking for a really good pizza, if you're looking for a really good burger, if you're looking for a really good salad, you go look for the specialties. So the same applies again for SEO. It's like if you do something really good, do your SEO about the thing that you do really well at. Is there less search volume? Of course there's less search volume. The goal isn't to get a bunch of searches. The goal isn't to get a bunch of clicks. The goal is to sell what you're supposed to be selling, because that's how you make money. And that's when I explained to them like that, it resonated. I'm like, yes, you could write a bunch of content about this thing because you do sort of offer these tangential products, but your ICP comes for credit cards. And once they have your credit card, you upsell them into loans and money transfers and all the other things that you do. So do your SEO about the thing that you do really well, get those conversions.
Yeah, I think that I'd probably be on the team to do it myself, but you do, especially old school sort of in the last few years, you just wanted to get the most amount of reach as possible. You try and work on all those different angles, but now with especially now with most of that, you say the top of the funnel stuff already kind of being answered the majority of the time, and the topical authority side, and being known for that thing when it comes to like large language models and stuff. It's going to be so important to have that mindset that you're talking about going forward, even more than it has been in the past. This is a good one because it's topical and it won't be as topical next time. So what are your thoughts on Google versus tools like SERP API when it comes to understanding search data?
I mean, are we going to weigh in on the lawsuit here? I think that if you look at certain people's websites, we don't have to call out SERP API, they appear to be giving a middle finger to Google. So who's right and who's wrong? I don't know. You pick a fight with a gorilla and the gorilla punches you back. Like, I don't know. You shouldn't have picked a fight with a gorilla. But I think that when it comes to data, the Google Search Console is the source of truth. I mean, is it accurate? No, but it's as inaccurate for every single website the same. So like, I like to trust Google Search Console data. My favorite thing about working with large brands is anytime I've worked with a large brand, the first thing I do is open up Search Console and then compare it to Ahrefs, SEMrush, SimilarWeb, and every other tool. I worked with WordPress, like WordPress.com. Immediately went into their Search Console and said, okay, how many people search for WordPress? It's the absolute biggest word in the entire whatever you want to call it, website hosting, development space. And let's see how that compares to SEMrush and Ahrefs. And it was vastly off. And I did the same with SurveyMonkey, and I did the same with Tinder, and I did the same with LinkedIn and Coinbase and every other company whose analytics I've gotten in a Search Console I've compared it. So again, is Search Console accurate? Hard to know, right? They obviously aggregate some data, but it's the same inaccurate for everyone. So I think that has to be the source of truth.
Yeah, I agree. What advice would you give for building a strong annual SEO plan? Obviously, you've done a lot of work on on that. Any sort of top tips there?
So I think that this comes from my experience of building annual plans and consulting with companies as they built annual plans. Most SEO annual plans are like these wish lists of like, you cram them full of a whole bunch of things that would be really, really nice if you could do. And I think that's not the way an annual plan should work. An annual plan, well, first you want to start with goals. Like, what are your goals for the year? And then the second thing is you're going to make a plan to reach those goals. So those should both be realistic. It shouldn't be, I find a lot of annual plans don't have any goal whatsoever. It's just like, yeah, I got lots of traffic, but like, it's not meaningful. Like, you want to find it like, well, I'd like to really get a lot of traffic in this space, right? This is the amount of traffic I want to do. And I think I wrote something on my newsletter about this, having SMART goals. So a SMART goal, it has to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timeliness. So like the timeliness one is the most important because it puts a specific time of like, I'm going to do this by the end of Q1. That's the goal. Like, you're doing all this work, it has to be done by end of Q1, not like, well, in 2026, I'm going to, 2x my traffic. And if you don't 2x my traffic, well, I don't know. I tried, I thought about it, like, so you make these goals and then you make a plan to achieve that plan. So I do this with my own personal life, my own consulting. And this is what I want to do for the next year. I want to work with a certain amount of clients. I want to have this amount of newsletter subscribers. I want to have, this amount of readers of my newsletter. What am I going to do by the end of to make that happen by the end of the year or end of the quarter when I made these goals? Not like, well, that's the goal. I put it on the wall and I just kind of check it at the end of the year and see if I did it. And I think that again, there's many things that can go into an annual plan, but I think the thing that's missing is this is what I want to achieve and this is how I'm going to achieve it. And these are the people I need to help me achieve it. Like, the specifics and lining up all the nuts and bolts of a plan.
Yeah, totally makes sense. I know we're running out of time. So what have you kind of got before we move on to part 2 at some stage, but what have you got coming up that people should watch out for? I know you got obviously the newsletter and stuff like that.
I really want to work on vibe coding, a tool. And the thing that my most important thing that I think about when it comes to SEO is how users feel, and think about being a user yourself. And to me, it seems like that's something that everyone should do, but they don't. So I want to like vibe code some sort of software around that. The other thing is this will be the end of 2026. I do have a new book coming out, which is again based on the same topic, called Customer Intelligence. It's coming out with Wiley, not fully written yet, so hopefully it does come out. But the idea of how to understand your users and care about your users and build towards your users, and not just like, well, I don't really know who my users are. The example that really spurred me to even think about this is I met a business. They made a food truck in a park, it was like a vegan food truck at a parking lot where a lot of construction workers were, I guess they're staging. They were parking their cars, and they're like, "There's a lot of people here, so we're gonna make a food truck here." But then they failed. I'm like, "Well, did you find out if anybody cared about vegan food? Is this the kind of food they wanted? Did this match their budget? Do they eat lunch at the time that you opened up for lunch hours?" And they're like, "I don't know. We didn't think about those things." And then they failed. They lost a bunch of money, and they had to sell the food truck. So that made me think, well, had they asked some of those questions before, maybe they would have been more successful. I don't even know if the food was any good. I wasn't even a customer, but so that's what the book is about. It's how do you understand your customers? What are the questions you need to ask to even figure out if this is going to work? Businesses will still fail, but they're much more likely to succeed if you know who your customer is and you put the work in to figure out, can the customer afford it? Do they want it? Is this something they'll even buy?
Yeah, that sounds good. I look forward to it, and maybe get you on and discuss it all when it's out. But yeah, it's been a pleasure having you on for this part. Hopefully we'll sort out a time for the second part. But yeah, thanks so much, Eli, for joining me today.
Absolutely. Looking forward to part 2.